1985. Steve Jobs was fired, not from a random company, but from Apple, the very company he helped create. Imagine building a business from a garage, turning it into one of the fastest-growing companies in America, and then being forced out. Most people would never recover from something like that. But Steve Jobs did something different. He came back, and years later, he transformed Apple into one of the most valuable companies in history. This is the story of Steve Jobs, the man who changed the world. Born in California in 1955, Steve Jobs was adopted shortly after birth. As a child, he was fascinated by electronics, technology, and the way things worked. But unlike most people, Jobs didn't just want to understand technology. He wanted to reinvent it. As a teenager, he met Steve Wozniak, a brilliant engineer who shared his passion for innovation. Together, they started building computers, not in a giant office, not in a laboratory, but in a garage. In 1976, the two friends founded Apple. At the time, computers were expensive, complicated, and mainly used by businesses. Steve Jobs believed computers should be simple, beautiful, and available to everyone. It was a bold vision, but it worked. Apple's early products gained attention, and the company grew rapidly. Then came the Apple II, one of the first successful personal computers in history. Almost overnight, Apple became one of the most exciting technology companies in the world. Steve Jobs was still in his 20s and already changing an entire industry, but success often creates new challenges. In 1984, Apple launched the Macintosh, a revolutionary computer that introduced a new way for people to interact with technology. But behind the scenes, tensions were growing. Jobs clashed with executives, disagreements turned into conflict, and eventually, the impossible happened. In 1985, Steve Jobs was pushed out of Apple. The company he built no longer wanted him. For most entrepreneurs, that would have been the end. For Steve Jobs, it was the beginning of his greatest chapter. After leaving Apple, he founded a new company called Next. The company focused on powerful computers and advanced software. At the same time, Jobs made another decision that would change his future. He bought a small animation studio from Lucasfilm. Few people paid attention, but that studio had a name: Pixar. Years later, Pixar would create Toy Story and become one of the most successful animation studios in history. Meanwhile, Apple struggled. Without Jobs, the company lost focus. Products failed. Innovation slowed down, and Apple came dangerously close to collapse. Then in 1997, something remarkable happened. Apple acquired Next, and Steve Jobs returned. The man who had once been fired was back. This time, he had a clear vision. Jobs simplified Apple's products, focused on innovation, and created a culture obsessed with excellence. Then came a series of products that changed the world: the iMac, the iPod, the iPhone, and the iPad. Each one transformed an industry. The iPhone alone changed the way billions of people communicate, work, and live. Under Steve Jobs, Apple went from a struggling company to one of the most valuable businesses on earth. But Steve Jobs' legacy isn't just about technology. It's about vision. It's about believing in ideas before anyone else sees their potential. And it's about refusing to quit after failure. Steve Jobs was fired from Apple. Most people remember that part, but what made him extraordinary was what happened next. He came back, and he changed the world.